Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast exploring sex, relationships, and liberation. I'm your host, Dr. Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we have Erin. Join us for another Relationship Anarchy research conversation. Together we talk about the finitude of our humanness, nerding out on the concept of hierarchy, and stepping into the abundance of expansive relating. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to Modern Anarchy. I am so delighted to have all of you pleasure activists from around the world tuning in for another episode each Wednesday. My name is Dr. Nicole. I am a sex and relationship psychotherapist providing psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, author of the Psychedelic Jealousy Guide, and founder of the Pleasure Practice, supporting individuals in crafting expansive sex lives and intimate relationships. Dear listener, you know these are my favorite episodes on the podcast. I love getting to talk about relationship anarchy. I love getting to talk to one of you, dear listeners, who trust me to come on to the show and who is ready to share their story with the Modern Anarchy community. It truly is an honor, and every time that I step into one of these recordings, every time I edit one of these recordings, I learn so much. My relationship anarchy practice is changed by every single one of you, and truly it is such a joy to be continuing my dissertation research, and it's such a joy to see people continuing to download the relationship anarchy dissertation. Dear listener, if you're new here, hey, I published the first research study on relationship anarchy, and it's available on my website for free to download. And it's such a joy to be creating these free resources together as a movement, as a community, and I'm delighted that you are here with me, tuning in and going for the ride together. All right, dear listener, if you are ready to liberate your pleasure, you can explore my offerings and free resources at modernanarchypodcast.com. And I want to say the biggest thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. You are supporting the long-term sustainability of the podcast, keeping this content free and accessible to all people. So thank you. And with that, dear listener, please know that I'm sending you all my love, and let's tune in to today's episode. Dear listener, there's a space already waiting for you where you are invited to let go of every old script about sex and relationships and begin living a life rooted in your pleasure, empowerment, and deep alignment. I'm Dr. Nicole, and this is your invitation to the Pleasure Liberation Groups, a transformative, educational, and deeply immersive experience designed for visionary individuals like you. Together, we'll gather in community to explore desire, expand relational wisdom, and embody the lives we're here to lead. Each session is woven with practices, teachings, and the kind of connection that makes real transformation possible. And I'll be right there with you, guiding the process with an embodied curriculum that supports both personal and collective liberation. This is your invitation into the next chapter of your erotic evolution. Say yes to your pleasure and visit modernanarchypodcast.com/pleasure practice to apply. And the first question that I like to ask each guest is, how would you introduce yourself to the listener?
Uh, Interesting. I think I would introduce myself as a relative newbie and but somebody with a very open mind, and a very open soul, and somebody who cares very deeply about effective practice, right? I have a lot of experience like doing development, especially working with software and software engineering, and because of that, kind of have to like both balance mastery and like getting really good at something, but also that empathy aspect. Like I really have to spend a lot of time, especially because my job is with front end
Mm,
development. I have to spend a lot of time empathizing with both customers, but also connecting people together, kind of trying to connect all the different pieces together. And so I put a lot of emphasis and care into the types of interactions that I have.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you're in the right space today. Well, so I'll open us up then with the first question, which is, what is relationship anarchy?
Relationship anarchy to me is a practice of and really in a lot of ways kind of an avoidance of hierarchical structures with partners that you want in your orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially when I decided to embrace poly, there's lots of different types of poly that you can embrace, or
Yes.
at least as a label.
Mm-hmm.
There's kitchen table poly. There's ones that have a primary and a secondary. There's ones that are much more like E&M style, where it's just acceptable that maybe you have this like primary partner, but it's acceptable to be ethically non-monogamous, especially in the last couple of years, in terms of politics and that sort of thing. When I got into poly, I was really thinking about like, well, my own politics are a certain way. How can I apply that thinking to, the way that my lifestyle is, like how I want to have relationships with other people,
Mm-hmm.
and really how I want to break down the expectations that I think a lot of people get into a relationship with and are just sort of pre-built into society.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I've ever had like a very high respect for like tradition
Sure.
or the Americanized culture, and
Yeah.
certainly it's not like I'm a Puritan or anything like that, right? So
I hear ya.
uh but I think my and so for that reason I really looked very carefully at all the different sort of flavors of poly. And I went with relationship anarchy because it followed that pattern to me.
Mm,
It was a breakdown of the hierarchy that, I think is a part of our lives every single day, whether it's at work or even like within friend groups or anything like that. There doesn't need to be a social hierarchy. At least that's like what I believe.
mm-hmm.
And you can make things work without having to be like, well, this is the person I'm gonna, that I defer to and spend my life with for all these different things, and just a lot of ways it seemed to make more sense the more I read about it. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. What a great point to start diving off into all of these different concepts. I'm like, oof, my nerdy side, it's activating. Let's go.
yeah, right.
Yes. So yeah, a lot of what was coming to mind for me was the beauty of relationship anarchy as something that encompasses all relationship practices like monogamy, polyamory, all of it fitting under the umbrella when we have this embrace of community and the fact that all of our relationships are important, right? So
Yeah.
when we have that, I feel like it's so beautiful to see this being applied to all different relationship structures. We should all know that all of the people in our lives are valuable. All of the people around us are what we need to have a meaningful life. Often, even in monogamy or polyamory, if you have 2 partners, 3 partners, people can fall into these holes of romanticism where I talk about it as like a black hole. Like, it's like, this is my person, or these are my 2 people, and this is all I need. And then we forget, like, wow, there's a whole network of people that we all need to thrive and have well-being, like minimum. It doesn't matter how many people you're having sex with, right? And so like,
right.
I love that, like, that embraces all different types of relationships. And I think it's important to get into the definition of hierarchy, because within our community, there's so many debates about hierarchy. My dissertation title, I was like, removing the hierarchy, rewriting the hierarchy, removing it, rewriting. Oh my gosh. I went back and forth on that title for so long and was trying to understand, how we define this term. And so when I think about hierarchy, I think about stratification. I think about ranking systems, and I think about power.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess ultimately I went with the title of rewriting hierarchy. So I'll get nerdy with you on why, and we can get into it. Because there's 8 billion people on this planet. There's going to be a stratification and a level of rank of who is the most close to me in intimacy, that I could even know their name. And when we're talking about 8 billion people, right? Now, does that mean they have power over dynamics? No, I really don't like veto powers. I really don't like to say this is a more important person than this other human being. We're all human beings. We're all important. And then now this additional thought, though, of under these systems, our time and energy is power. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. So now these people that I am sharing my time and energy with, that is a sharing of power. So then that's where I went with rewriting the hierarchy. Yeah, of like, how do I do that? But like, I go ahead, nerd out with me.
I mean,
let's go.
No. I mean, I've been weirdly obsessed about. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dunbar's number before.
No. What is that?
So Dunbar's number is this concept that like, essentially, like humans have like a cognitive limit for how much they can, like you can only have like 5 really close friends or like family level relationships, and then there's like 15 close friends, and it keeps on expanding out, right?
Sure.
I think we've all experienced that moment where a group chat just gets way too many people in it, right? And it's constantly pinging, it's constantly going off,
notification silenced, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And the same thing can happen in our personal lives too. Like, we invite too many people into these rings of like trust, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Then it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it also like negatively impacts those relationships. Everybody wants to be as close to the center as possible, but in a lot of cases there's a clear boundary between those, right? I think that what's really interesting with something like Facebook, right?
Sure.
I feel like as soon as like my grandma got on Facebook, I just stopped using it. And and like, or like my boss or something like that.
Sure.
How do you, at a certain point, it reaches a moment where you're basically like, okay, how do I even post a message that can be received the same way between like my boss, my second grade teacher, my mom, my close friends? It becomes impossible, right?
Right.
So there's that boundary, and then there's sort of like the smorgasbord kind of like aspect, which is, can you basically take those relationships and figure out which ones you want with other people? Can you organize them at not only just at that sort of like the rings of kind of like Dunbar's number, but also like within certain pockets of that are like important to you, or a social need that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, here's Fat Cat. I told you Fat Cat would come on mid-recording. Hello, Fat Cat. Would you like to sit? Great, thank you. Just gotta come in on her own timing, I guess.
All right, just a moment. I'll get mine.
Oh, totally.
Totally gonna take it over.
Cats for the recording.
Yes.
Oh, so cute. What's the cat's name?
His name is Moritz. Max is the other cat.
Okay.
And he's a sweetie pie. But usually, apparently, cats actually do like get onto your lap or otherwise want attention from you
Mm.
when you're on Zoom because they don't know you're talking to anybody else except for
Ah,
them.
so they're just like,
So
oh, mom is calling for me. Oh,
you're right. They're like, oh, she's talking to me.
it's so funny
Great.
because there have definitely been times in the years of recording the podcast where Fat Cat has come up and like she's like slapped me with her paw, not with nail, but I wonder if she's like, hello, dumb, like I'm here, I'm right here. Oh, great, love a cat moment. But yeah, I appreciate that reality, the finitude of our humanness. Now I've got cat hair on my
Mm-hmm.
face. That there's only so much that we can connect with, because I remember when I first started getting into relationship anarchy, I was like, yes, like we shouldn't have veto powers. That sounds highly problematic for the emotional integrity of other people's experience. They're not just this secondary object in my world, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I was like, yes, relationship anarchy. And then I got into it and I was like, okay, so I have like 3 partners. So I need to spread up, or like 4, right? Like 25, 25, 25, 25. And then I remember doing my dissertation and people were like, relationship anarchy is also about my parents. It's also about my children. And I was like, oh, it's about, right, like deconstructing this priority we place on sex as the most meaningful relationship. And so me coming in from polyamory to relationship anarchy, I was still applying that lens of like 25, 25, 25, not realizing,
Yeah.
oh, this is actually about all of our relationships and what does it mean to really treat all of them as valuable things that I should be investing my time and energy into. And so that was such a paradigm shift. And then you're right, there's only so many people that we're able to really connect with and give that intentionality to. And so I think the best thing that we can do is to be really like as much as possible clear with the people around us of what our
Yeah.
capacities are, how we want to connect. And I think that I've seen, obviously then within that stratification, like different relationships in my world or other people's worlds that are closer, right? And they're closer
Yeah.
than some other ones. And I think the important difference being that like there's a respect and care for all people in that. It's not like, oh, well, if my partner says they don't like you, you have to leave, right? Like it's a very different world
Right.
where there's still like different levels of proximity, but respect for each
Yeah.
person that's in that and care for each person that's in that dynamic.
Yeah. I realized definitely there was a point at which I think about a year ago,
Mm.
in which I had realized that I messed up
Mm.
and that it was
I'm still
just
messing
like,
up.
yeah, right. But
So
like
much to learn.
but like no, I think at that moment I had double booked something. Like I had
Oh,
double
sure,
booked a
sure, sure,
day.
sure, sure,
And
sure,
I
sure.
was like, oh, crud. Like I need to make a change. And like that's gonna happen. Double booking, yeah, like it really made me like double down on tools to avoid that, right? Like
Mm.
I figured out a shared calendar
Yeah, yeah.
with folks. I taught, I put in the work to basically kind of create the infrastructure that avoided that situation in the future. And it hasn't happened since then. But
Nice.
like those are things that you learn as you're going along, especially in poly, where like no, it isn't 25, 25, 25. It's never going to be that.
Yeah.
But it does need to be managed, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you need to spec out those days that are like for one person or another, and
Mm-hmm.
be really careful about those, like not just like physical boundaries, but like time boundaries, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. The shared Google Calendar is like a poly joke, right? It's like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
I'm definitely a written calendar sort of girly, but I feel that. So we're kind of getting into the second question then, which is how do you practice relationship anarchy? So I'm hearing this intentionality to your time and energy, right? Finding these tools that can help you with that. What are some of the other ways you practice relationship anarchy?
Um, uh, right now I practice relationship anarchy with 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
The first and kind of the longest is not sexual. It's entirely either like professional or friendship level
Sure.
kind of things.
Yeah.
But that's great for us. Like
Yeah.
totally fine. Like
Yeah.
that's and I think that's like once we set those boundaries, we can adjust them and we certainly talk about them. But but yeah, that's like the first one. The second one is we've been together for around 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and it started out a lot more romantic,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, it's also sort of based on both of us kind of going through the experience of getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
That one's also, she is fully poly and has multiple partners, and so it is it's a very different situation than my other relationship, which is where she's much more asexual.
Mm-hmm.
And then my latest relationship, she's actually monogamous. Like she doesn't have any other partner, but she also has is like balancing two jobs, one of which is full time and
Yeah.
the other which is part time, and really like just doesn't have the time to or energy to have multiple relationships anyway.
Yeah.
But that's probably the only reason why she she's um uh she's kind of like, yeah, that's fine. Like
Yeah.
I don't really have time for you in the same way as I would in a monogamous relationship, which is interesting. Obviously, I've had the discussion with her about like, well, I'm non-monogamous. Like I
Mm.
am, I have other relationships, and she's like, that's totally okay. I'm totally fine
Yeah.
with it, and I like the fact that we're leaving the door open for me to decide to not be monogamous at some point.
Yeah.
It's just like not in my plan. It's kind of like how she like right
Mm-hmm.
now. Uh,
Yes.
and but I think that one of the things that I've noticed, especially with the monogamous, the last partner,
Yeah.
is that like we've kind of let that like new relationship energy just
Mm.
continue for almost 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's almost a part of the poly experience, is that like because you are kind of splitting your time, maybe not exactly like
Right,
25%,
right, right.
but you are splitting your time, and that allows you to have that space to let the relationship grow in a way that is that's not so intensely like focused. You
Right.
know,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a built-in level of distance
Yeah.
that I really appreciate and has been, yeah, just incredible. It
Mm-hmm.
really does feel amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it keeps the erotic desire and the desire for connection in general really there when there's that amount of spaciousness, and rather than riding the escalator of, oh, we must move to this next level, this next level, this next level, this next level, and then realizing, wow, I actually don't like where we're at anymore. How do we undo this? And
Right.
then the whole thing's a big bomb, right, of painful emotional heartbreak. To be able to have this more deconstruction, it's the blank canvas there, you're connecting in so many different ways, and so if at some points you move closer, it's a little bit easier to also ebb back and forth, right? Maybe one week you see them 3 times, maybe one week you don't see them at all, maybe a couple months, I don't know where you're at with this person, right? But you have
Yeah.
that ability to form that, rather than this expectation that if we don't start seeing each other every single day and then also live with each other, it means we don't love each other, which is a lot to deconstruct.
Yeah.
And often the level of security that is tied to that, where we feel like I have to do this to feel secure in the attachment. Like even for myself, I would notice that with men, I would have a much harder time with spaciousness and the connection than I would with my femme and women partners. So I could be like, oh, I haven't heard from them from a few weeks. It's fine. But then with a male, I have these experiences of trauma and other things that would bring it up. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
they're abandoning me. They're like pieces of shit, whatever I would slew, you know? And so it's interesting how there's often such a drive for security with the relationship escalator too. Because if I started seeing them
Yeah.
every day, I'm like, oh, okay, they care about me, right? So it's a lot to rewrite that level of security and love with these different narratives, and then to see the
Yeah.
different patterns with the different genders and all of it.
Yeah. And I hear it's so interesting because I do hear like stories from her of like her friends' relationships too,
Mm.
right? Like, one of which, there isn't a night in which they don't like send text messages to each other and say
Yeah.
like good night,
Yeah.
and that actually like led to a fight because that didn't happen like one night, and like then it was like there's everything's wrong, like
Yeah.
like it was like breakup moment, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that level of like exclusive kind of expectation, right, is so I'm so glad I'm not doing that. Like I'm just
Mm-hmm.
and we're both like very happy with, we text. It's not that we're not texting each other. We are.
Sure, sure.
But that like I think without that like obligation to say something even though you don't really have anything to say
Yeah, yeah.
feels a lot better.
Yeah.
And we both feel very secure,
Beautiful.
without having to do the sort of performative stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like yeah. I'll say that, you know, I'm certainly coming out of, about 10 years of like monogamous marriage, you
Wow.
know.
Yeah.
My wife cheated on me.
Oof. Yeah.
And so, that was a lot of that was a very obviously a very painful experience.
I can imagine.
Um,
Yeah.
it's certainly taken a while for me to open my heart again. Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to expose myself to that like level of pain once, again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but certainly through Polly and certainly through my partners, and certainly through therapy,
Yes, yes.
um, I've really been able to reopen.
Yeah.
Also, that the aspect that I think Polly kind of fills within this is that even if I lose a partner, I have other partners to talk
Yeah.
to about that pain or like
Mm-hmm.
or that loss, right?
Right.
Just having that sort of safety net, that social safety net is so important to me now
Yeah.
because I really I was that guy that like, there wasn't a vacation in which we didn't take together.
Mm.
There wasn't a friend group thing that we didn't do together. We were very much attached at the hip
Mm.
within my marriage. And it definitely put me into a state of being vulnerable
Mm.
when that relationship disappeared.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Makes
mean,
sense.
yeah, it hurt
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
deeply.
Yeah. 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 That black hole of relating where you just.
Well, I mean, it was a moment of, wow, I've really put like all my eggs in one basket, and
What?
like,
I'm just gonna ignore it.
yeah, no problem. It really was that moment of like I had put all my eggs in one basket, and like maybe this is not a good idea, and
Yeah.
that I got to figure out a better system that works for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We all need that sort of community and support. And so I can only imagine to not have all these other people around you during that time of grief was probably tremendously difficult to come out of. And yeah, it's a lot to unlearn after 10 years of living life in that way. And so I'm curious, given the insight that you have now, is there anything that you would say to your younger self when you look back?
Especially as like my younger self, I really lacked a lot of like self-esteem and self-confidence.
Sure.
I didn't. I even throughout college, like I didn't really date that much. I didn't really have that much experience around these things. I didn't have enough practice. And I think if I was going to tell my younger self anything, it's, spend some time practicing love. Don't
Mm,
just throw everything into one place. There, like, yes, like depth in love is good and it's important, but you don't need to go deep all at once. And
yeah.
you don't just need to give up everything without having enough context to make those kinds of decisions.
Hmm.
There's other decisions that we totally force like 20-year-olds to make that are absolutely like terrible. you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
Being able like getting a credit card,
Student
going
loans.
student loans, going to college,
Yeah.
right? Joining the army, right? Like getting married, or at least the expectation of getting married around your 20s, early
Yeah.
20s,
I thought I was going to have kids before 21 growing up in Christianity. That was my trajectory.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and like it is. There is an aspect of like I don't really want to tell young people what to do. Like
Sure.
I really don't. I think that my parents and probably my parents' parents did plenty of that.
Yeah.
And while there there is something to be said about like, hey, I'm older, I know what you should do. Like, uh,
Yeah,
um, I really think that people need to experience failure for themselves
sure.
in a lot of cases. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if anything, I just didn't fail at relationships enough when I was younger.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's so hard when these systems are so embedded everywhere and how deep that goes within our unconscious. As I was researching this for my dissertation and getting deep into it, I felt like I knew so much cognitively. And then as I tried to step into the actual practice of it, it was jarring to find the ways that studying a phenomena, learning all of the ins and outs, that I could in my possible time does not translate to praxis. And so unlearning the conditioned stimulus of, right, my partner kissing someone else, and that being something that brought me down to the floor as I felt like this intense swirl of emotions and started crying. Like nothing could have prepared me for that immediate fear of abandonment that came up in my body, right? As much as I read all the books, like, wow, you got to start walking in. So there's so much
Yeah.
compassion to have for all of us in the sense that we're all under these systems and it's deep within our unconscious. And so it's really difficult to come out from under that and relearn security and relearn new narratives. And so, yeah, I think it's important regardless. It's like, yeah, I don't want to tell people how to live. And then I feel like there is this universal truth that we can kind of sit on that, again, regardless of what practice you do, we all need community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Invest in the relationships around you, all of them. Do not just
Yeah.
fall into one relationship of any kind, sexual, platonic. You need a community of people. We're relational beings. And so I feel like that universal truth is something that we could like proclaim as something that's healthy for all. Like literally we know that some of the most like psychological warped experiences happen when you're in isolation. That's why isolation is a form of torture for our species. And so like
Mhm.
I feel like we can rest at least on that of like, if I could look to my younger self, it's like, please do not put all the eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Please tend to all these beautiful relationships. And honestly, based on what I see with my research in sexuality, if you are having sex with one person, taking space with other people, even if you're not having sex with them, is a lot of what brings that desire, is having that day. Often under capitalism, that's all of us away from at work, right? Or these
Yeah.
other people.
Right.
But like you need that sort of diversity to have that longing and desire. And then for me, I find so much life force in being able to connect erotically with so many different people that it brings such a love and appreciation for each individual person that I get that. So no matter where you're doing it, you gotta connect with multiple people to really feel you're most human and alive. I think that's like a non-negotiable piece of this.
I think so too. My friendships that I've had for like almost 15 years now,
Yeah.
those are the relationships that, out of all of this, I very much value.
Yeah.
I'm value it more than any of the cash that I could ever get out of a
Right.
job or anything,
Right.
or any sort of possession that I have. It is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there was an article a while ago from like NPR, that was on NPR, that was
Sure.
about how close friends can help you live longer.
Mm-hmm. There it is.
And I think even in the article it said you can't just have a wife, like at least if you're or a husband, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to have more than that. You need to have a community.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about like, maybe like prehistoric man or something like that, or look towards like bonobos and how they live, or chimpanzees, they live in troops, they live in tribes, and those tribes have relationships with like everybody has a relationship with everyone else in that group. Going back to the politics of it, right? That the suburbanization of like Americans has created so many toxic relationships that we have with other people, and certainly broken down a lot of the things that allowed for like social revolution in other countries. It's so interesting when you hear about most social revolutions, they happened when they were talked about at a community gathering space at like the
Sure.
beer hall or something like that.
Sure.
And that just doesn't exist
No.
in America.
Yeah, you gotta
at least at
pay.
this moment.
You gotta pay to
Yeah,
meet
you
in
gotta
that
pay
house. Yeah. Pay to rent it out, and then
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I know it's jarring when you think about it all and the
It really
scale,
is.
the
It
scale
is.
of it all, and then the pain of it all. So many people are isolated now more than ever. People are dating AI. Wow, like
I
it's a
know. I know.
fascinating time to be alive, and yeah, exactly. Taking a deep breath on that one. I like to think that it's all going to be for the best, but there's definitely going to be some bumpy rides along this as we learn to navigate what it means to maintain social skills
Yeah.
for rupture and repair when gratification becomes so instant with our lives, right? Like if I can just get an instant answer right now, why would I want to go with this other human that I have to sit down and do this rupture and repair work and they're oh God, like you see how fast that's gonna
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
gonna get interesting before it gets better.
Yeah. I mean, I think triangulation is something that I'm desperately trying to kind of avoid, and it really does take time and practice to recognize when you're about to triangulate out to someone to help rescue the situation that you should be dealing with, right?
Sure.
These are things that take practice. That's just one example of many different traps that can happen in any friendship, in any relationship that you have.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking like friend. I'm talking about like professional relationships.
Totally.
I'm talking about childcare, right? Like,
right.
The classic example of triangulation is, well, mom told me I could, but dad told me I couldn't. So, it's like, so, but these things apply across the board.
Yeah.
And carefully avoiding them, carefully managing, or at least practicing how to handle conflict is so important.
Yeah, especially when you get into even smaller communities. Like for me as a queer rock climbing polyamorous person, there's only like 2 really big gyms in Chicago, and you start to how many poly people, wow, you start to all really know each other, at least within my age group. I'm sure there's some older and younger that I have not tapped into, but once you start to know everybody and then there's a conflict and then that person goes around and talks to other people, or maybe I've been that person that goes around and talks to other people, and you're like, oh wow, I've just put a lot of different people into a really complex situation about privacy and consent. Oh my, it is an endless in a way that I never had to navigate really when I was in a monogamous culture, because it was this very simple narrative of I know not all monogamous relationships are like this, but for me, it's like this, like we date and then like some sort of intense rupture happens. You cannot see that person again, and then you're not able to share friend space ever again. I know that's not all of it, but like damn, there was just so much feelings and unconscious stuff I didn't even know how to sit with at that time in my life that it really was chaotic.
Yeah. And limiting too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think the biggest thing since I embraced poly in the last 2 years is like me and my ex-wife, we didn't do anything within kink, or like, and I didn't know anything about it. There's this whole world that was kind of outside of even like my visibility.
Yeah, so much
because
play.
It wasn't something that, I mean, I can't say that I'm like a big kinkster or anything like that.
Sure.
I don't know that much, but I also I now have partners that are interested in exploring that, and going to like into going to like a playhouse or something like that, and kind of exploring that together.
Have you taken the BDSM test?
No, I actually haven't.
Yeah,
I have not.
I mean, I didn't create this, and I'm not necessarily endorsing it, but it's such a big, like, normalized thing within the community of, like, especially, on different, like, FetLife.
I've seen it on FetLife.
Yeah, exactly. Say on FetLife, it's like, here you go. And I always thought it was interesting that one of the categories on there was non-monogamy, right? Because as someone who's been practicing this for many years, that doesn't feel kinky in any capacity, right? So it's really interesting to think about, like, when we think about relationship anarchy, I think we can also apply it to something like kink, right? Relationship anarchy
certainly.
being about like power structures and deconstructing the ways that they're so deeply internalized within our unconscious. And so if we're thinking about that, like kink being this definition of non-normative, I think like it's not just about sex. I would say non-normative sexuality and
Yeah.
eroticism, right? Who's defining the norm? Because polyamory feels really normal to me in my community right now, and so like I wouldn't put that on that list. But from a monogamous lens, yeah, I guess that is super kinky, right? And so it's just interesting of like how do we even define these things, you know?
Yeah, that is really interesting. And
Power.
the poly community and kink community, I mean, there is overlap, but not as much as I would think, or at least I would think, coming into it. And
Well,
and
yeah.
also like, I mean, I was in one relationship closer to the start of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and it was purely kink.
Mm,
It was purely rope play,
cool.
but it wasn't sexual
Yeah,
at all.
exactly. Exactly,
It was,
right?
and it was, and she was a lesbian. She actually had like a partner, and they had a kid, and
Yeah,
they were married, and it was not a sexual thing at all.
beautiful.
Um,
Embodiment.
I know, and
Sensual.
I loved it, and I actually like I learned a lot about not only like the thing that I really wanted to kind of like practice was I wanted to both be able to like give and receive rope play safely, and that really gave me the tools necessary to kind of figure out that practice and to do it properly.
Hmm.
Because, really at the end of the day, I just want to be skilled at being a good lover and a good
Yeah.
partner.
Yes. Yes. Don't we
Like,
all, right? Don't we all?
I mean, I will say that like I don't feel like I've even slightly nerded out enough when it
Sure.
comes to rope
Same.
play, and
Yeah.
my God, like it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like learning a new instrument or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
It's at that
Oh, yeah.
level.
I've taken some classes even as a bottom, and I was like, wow, the top is. I mean, there's a lot to learn as bottom too, but the knots, I'm like, wow, wow.
Oh, I
You could
know.
nerd out for a lifetime, right? And so, I think it's interesting. You were talking about the politics of it all, and it's like I do believe that at our core, all of us want to be better lovers. All of us want to be the best sort of human that we can be, even when we are seeing people causing harm. I think that, like, stepping into radical empathy of understanding their current context and situation, also to take accountability for that, of course, but to understand their current context. I think all of us want to have these skills. I do not think that
Yeah,
I should have to be in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, without any joke there, to become a psychologist, right? Like to
right.
get these skills on how to help people and be good in relationships, which is how the therapeutic relationship works, is that relation, right? Like, whoa. So I think we need radical system change where we could have all of these sorts of skills as part of our fundamental education,
Yeah.
hands down. And so that's why I practice relationship anarchy. And so I'm curious, why do you? Why is this something that you do in your life?
I practice this because I need to experience everything. I need to know, and I need to practice, and I need to fail. And hopefully I fail without hurting other people. That is by far one of my core
Right.
values. I don't
Yeah,
want to hurt anyone,
of
but
course.
I need that space to mess up
Yep.
and to get better, to be good at this, to be good at having relationships, practicing relationships, and yeah. So a large part of it is
Hmm.
that I need this time to rebuild myself,
Sure.
rebuild my relationships. And okay, like for instance, I've tried out this kink, like I've tried out rope play, but is this the only kink that I like or don't like? Like like these are aspects that, I probably should have figured out at least in my early 30s, but I didn't. That wasn't a part of, the life that I brought on, when I got married at a pretty early age.
Hmm.
So I feel deeply that it's like I don't have enough perspective. And
Mm.
more than that, I don't know if I'll ever have enough perspective.
Right, right. That's what I was saying. Because when do you hit that limit? I think I'll still
Yeah,
be getting to the end. Like, that was a novel experience. Wow.
yeah, right.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
right? Hopefully.
No, I think, going back to like the relationship anarchy aspect, the point is the journey. It's not the
Yeah.
destination,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
there's never a happy ending that
Yeah.
you're trying to get to.
Hmm.
It is about enjoying the moment and the experience, and in what you did with this short time that we have on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So coming into presence, right? The
Hmm.
presence of it all. And sometimes that means the pain of the polyamorous relationship you were in where he still lied and you say why. And
Right,
then you cry for
right.
a long time and you say why.
Yeah,
But man,
yeah.
I was present with that pain, wasn't I? And so
I mean, for me, I had I you know I one of the early things I did was I had sex with one of my best friends,
mm,
and that was kind of a huge mistake in a lot of
mm,
ways. I think that it changed like our relationship a lot,
sure.
but also like there was aspects of like jealousy that I didn't really
Mm,
know how to deal with,
yeah.
that I didn't have enough practice and understanding about.
Right.
I recognized kind of early on that they just didn't have the capability to really, you know, self analyze is probably the best word.
I mean,
Like
it's,
they
yeah.
were, they were their behavior, their actions, their jealousy, like these things I realized I couldn't really talk to him about because it was
Mm,
impossible for me to break through, that sort of barrier.
hmm.
Because in a lot of ways, like, and even though I asked, this never happened, but I was like, you really should, about these aspects, you really should see a therapist or
Mm,
something to
yeah.
work through these problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to walk away once it was obvious that he wasn't able to even put in that work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that everybody needs to be in therapy, but if you're dealing with trauma like he was, I just wish, um, you know, I wish I could do more, but I know that there's certainly limits to what I can provide as a partner.
Sure.
Um,
Yep.
I, you know, I,
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of becoming someone's therapist
Mm. Yeah. And yeah. And then
when
like,
you're empathizing, I should
and
say.
what happens when you actually are a therapist and you're like, how do I
Right.
make relationships now? What do I do? Right? Like it's fast. Like, oh man, I've sat in
Uh,
that space for a long time. I'm not just normal anymore. But it's
right.
fascinating because I think that's where I go back to that scale of the systems and the politics of it all. Because to survive in our current world, where 49% of the global wealth is owned by the 1%. We all have to work jobs that keep us away from getting the time that we need to build these educational resources and insight into relationships. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, under our current structure, it's like, hey, like for me to survive under this current dynamic and feel okay, like I cannot support you in this way and I need you to see the professional. And then I go to that deeper stance of like, how do we dismantle the systems that we all have the skills? Because prior to what, like 200 years ago, we didn't fucking have therapists, right? We all lived in community and figured it out together, but that was much before like these mass systems that we live under now.
Yeah.
And so
I
it's like,
mean,
I hear you. The nuance of that is
it's
tricky.
overwhelming.
Yeah. Oof, deep breaths, And so like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
hitting on so many of these big systems that are impacting us in our interpersonal relationships within our community and within the world at large. And so I'm curious, how does relationship anarchy impact your practice of intimacy? What has that looked like for you?
I mean, like what hasn't it done
Yeah,
for
yeah, sure,
intimacy? I
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
guess
yeah,
it's
yeah,
sort
I
of,
hear you.
uh, it's so. I mean, I think of it as every relationship having its own snowflake of intimacy,
Yeah,
right? Like
beautiful.
it's not just having lots of partners; it's having lots of different kinds of intimacy and relationships and support. And so, I mean, we did talk about like the new relationship energy and also that sort of like
Wow.
25% sort of time, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a finite amount of like, sex that I can have,
Sure. Sure.
at least enjoyably,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's a finite amount of intimacy I can give,
Yeah.
right? And I always have to keep kind of track of that and balance that between all of my partners and also sort of check in like, is this the intimacy that you want, right?
Right.
Or are you not? If you're not interested, it's fine too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's That's okay. We can adjust those boundaries, as long as we're continuing to communicate.
Right, right. And change
Yeah,
is the only inevitable that we have. So we can do that
yeah,
relationship anarchy smorgasbord. And then how soon do we have to do it again? I don't know, a month?
right.
6? Like where are we, it's like
Yes,
it's that
yeah,
ongoing discussion. I love the concepts of meeting under mutual enjoyment, mutuality rather than obligation. And so I feel like that is a constant ongoing discussion. And then when we get clear on what we're agreeing to, I found myself, one of my lovers like really wanted to do the relationship anarchy smorgasbord. And at that time in our dynamic, I was feeling so burnt out by the high levels of processing, because it's always like the things you fall in love with also end up being some of the hardest parts of the relationship. So we were like heady intellectuals and we're like going, going, going. And then when things are wrong, we're like going, 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 going. And I'm like, I need to stop. Like this is, I need no more talking. Thank you. And so when he was like, let's do the smorgasbord, let's do it, I was like, no, there is so many things that board doesn't even begin to touch. It is futile. It is pointless. Like I can't even get into it, And so it's so funny at the beginning of the journey. I'm like, wow, look at this really cool thing. And then I'm like, it's not enough. And so it's like, it's
well,
like,
I mean, it's never going to be enough,
I
right?
know, I know, I know.
Like
So it's like ongoing discussions,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, if it was just about like writing laws, then we wouldn't need judges, right? Like this is the thing. You
Mm-hmm.
need to have that moment, in court, to be able to figure out like what did that boundary actually mean in
Mm-hmm.
this particular situation? Was the boundary broken? Was it too well respected? I think yeah, there is an aspect of like, yeah, no, it's like certainly the smorgasbord isn't everything, but
Right.
it's supposed to sort of be the starting place for you to figure out those boundaries
Yeah.
in a more personalized way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good starting place and then continued discussion, right? Because
Right.
Lord knows, like, please text me on my birthday. That's not on there. You know what I mean? Like all
Yeah,
these little
yeah.
things. It's wild, the infinite complexity of our humanness. And so we're kind of hitting on some of the difficulties then, which is the next question. What are the difficulties of relationship anarchy for you?
Resource management for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Like it is making sure that you're not only thinking like a day out, but a week out and a month out. Like you don't want to miss somebody's birthday.
Right.
That's terrible, for anybody. And you want to make sure that you're setting aside the time, the time that's like that's kind of written out by by something like a smorgasbord, but also just like, getting that feel, in the
Mm-hmm.
relationship of how much time should you be spending together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also like, making exceptions for when emergencies pop up too. By emergencies, I don't mean like just going to the ER. I mean like, if there is a serious moment of like maybe someone got fired
Yeah.
or, so professionally, or maybe they lost a loved one,
Yeah.
or maybe, maybe they just had a really shitty day,
Yeah.
or are starting to fall into depression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That those are all emergencies to me, and I make exceptions for those. I cancel plans for those,
Mm-hmm.
because that's really important.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Fluidity.
yeah, fluidity. My biggest difficulty right now is finding guys that I like. I
Sure.
think I came out as
Mm-hmm.
like pansexual, at the same time as I came out as poly to my
Sure.
friends and my family. And I think that my biggest problem, at least when it comes to trying to sort of explore and, and practice gay relationships, is sort of this like, I don't know if there's a better way to explain this, but this sort of grinder
Mm. Sure. Sure. Sure.
culture
Sure.
that is so sexually driven in the gay
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. But yeah.
If anything, I've found relationships with bi guys a lot better when I run into them, which is, well, there is no bi specific place to find
Right.
that.
Right.
So so yeah, the other difficulty I've had is that most women expect a guy to be dominant, and that's not really my vibe. I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I think somebody described my energy as little brother energy,
Mm.
and I don't think that fits with a lot of people, or at least I haven't really found it to fit with people who are looking for a more domineering, maybe, type of person. Um,
Mm.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
it's it you know but I also see that as being like kind of an extension of patriarchy anyway, and like and maybe I shouldn't really look for those types of people, or really like if that is what they're looking for, maybe it's just not something that I want to embrace.
Yeah, how I look at it is kind of like how I look at other sorts of drugs and experiences, right? Because my clinical work in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, I did a lot of
Mhm.
training in drug use and chaotic drug use, right? And so you think about the relationship that we have to these different experiences, right? So the relationship to dominance, relationship to a substance, it becomes chaotic when you need it and you cannot function without it, right? And so when someone says, I need dominance all the time, and that is the only energy that ever turns me on, well, now I feel a little different about that than, hey, sometimes it's fun to play where I'm the Dom. Sometimes it's fun to play with you're the Dom. That's a very different space than like, I need this drug all the time in this exact way. And I think
Yeah.
you're so right to be hitting on the ways that our culture has really reinforced this. When I look back on my very Christian upbringing, let's go all the way back to my Christian upbringing. Okay, I was taught that the man is closer to God. That's not even a joke. I don't know where you've come from, but like that was a very real time in my life. And so if
I'm
I
so
was
sorry. It's so
Thank
that's
you.
rough. Like
Yeah.
I I will say, like, I grew up with academics,
I love
and
that for you.
specifically, yeah, specifically parents that were like, where I would ask questions like, well, what do you, I would say, what do you believe in? Or like, what's the right religion? Or so, that things, and they'd be like, no, well, what do you believe in? They would immediately go back to me, make me make up
Yes.
something,
Yes.
or me approach it. I think at one point
Yes.
I said, like, I think the sun is God, or
Sure.
something
Yeah.
like that. And I was like, that seems reasonable.
I love that you didn't experience this hole that I had to climb out of because men were closer to God, and I believed that full heartedly, which is so wild where I'm at now. But yeah, at the time I was like, yes, men are closer to God. My parents were both only graduated from high school, so I'm a first gen
Mm.
undergrad and now a graduate student, or first gen graduate holder. Wow, yeah, I've graduated by the time this is coming out.
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a bit of a journey to unpack and
Congratulations, by the way.
thank you. I appreciate that. What a journey. What a journey. I've come so
Oh
far
yeah.
from my family. It's tricky in terms of consciousness. My mom's still Mormon. There's a lot there.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
yep. And so men were closer to God and they were supposed to lead. Like that was a big part of it is that the man is supposed to lead the head of the household. And so like, yeah, of course I was very attracted to like strong, domineering men who never cried because that would be weakness. And so when I go way back, I was unattracted to men who would cry. I was unattracted to
Yeah.
queer men. To getting to a space where I'm like, I don't think I will ever date another cis heterosexual man. I mean, I'm here to be proven wrong. I am here to be
Right.
proven wrong. But my natural tendencies these days are towards queer people who can hold all different types of capacities and that being so beautiful and expansive. And so like, yeah, that journey is quite a transformation.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because, like, yeah, I do feel like a lot of my relationships, I'm just sort of picking up the pieces from guys who just don't have any ability to express themselves emotionally.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was telling someone recently, it was like, I really love a movie that makes me cry.
Yeah.
Like why, it's so, it feels so good to cry sometimes, like
Mhm.
so good.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like for me, it just feels like a dessert or something like
Yeah.
that. Like it's like
Yeah.
you just such a great release, and it just
Yes.
pains me. And
Oh
there's these
yeah.
people out here who are just
Oh
like,
yeah. Holding
you're
so much.
crying? I don't know if
Yeah.
that's like, like
Yeah.
what's wrong
Yeah.
with you? How
Yeah.
can you?
Yeah.
And it's like Miyazaki films that are just absolutely beautiful. Like,
Sure.
I can't watch Princess Mononoke without like crying. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
mainly because,
Beautiful.
you kind of like know the ending at this point, but it's sort of like
Mhm.
it's just everything that like leads up to it that's just so like,
Yeah.
oh, but also
Yeah.
there's that like rebirth birth thing, and I feel that way. There's certain movies, I'm very movie obsessed,
Sure. Sure. Sure.
but there's certain movies that I use that I'm just like, okay,
Beautiful.
good.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're tapped into that. I'm so glad you're tapped into that, because yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many people generally, but especially men who are just holding so much in there and can't
Mm.
fathom because it's quite literally been unsafe for people, from a young
Yeah.
age men are taught, hey, man up, be a man, right? And it's heartbreaking to see the suicide rates of men drastically higher than women, right? And so we have to take
Yeah.
all of that into context here with what's going on. And so I always say, as a psychotherapist and sex advocate, and I always say that you can only come as hard as you can cry, because it's all about being in touch with your body and sensations and your experiences and your vulnerability, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that the cry harder, come harder, folks. I say that all the time. And that's what it means to be a pleasure activist. And so we're hitting
Yeah,
on some of
for
the
sure.
joys then of like expression and tapping in more to your body. I'm curious, what are some of the other joys you've had with relationship anarchy?
I think just being really okay with my lifestyle, like that acceptance. I don't think that none of my friends have ever made me feel bad.
Mm,
And my parents and my sister, like they're very, very supportive.
so jealous.
Uh, and like, I know, I
Oh,
mean,
I had to work
uh,
hard to get that support.
yeah, I will say that,
Yeah.
you know, so when I was growing up, my mom
Yeah.
came out of the closet.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Okay,
like right
cool.
around it when I was about 12,
Nice.
my mom and my dad divorced, and my mom, started her own journey into,
Sure.
but it was a very like 2000s kind of like lesbian journey,
Hmm.
right? And if anything, if any of my family has had like a weird reaction to me being poly, it's probably my mom,
Hmm.
because she, her kind of like coming out sort of liberation
Sure.
experience still included, finding the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, when I came out, being pansexual, that's fine. Like that, I don't think that had as much of an impact. But
Mm.
there was a few times in which my mom said, "Well, you'll find the one," something
Oof.
like that. And I was just like,
Oof.
I don't think you understand my lifestyle fully.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's uh, there's also something about the 2000s sort of LGBT community that's very different
Oh
than
yeah.
2010s, 2020s. It's
Sure. I mean, yeah, the younger generations are coming out rating some of the highest rates of non-monogamy that we've ever seen generationally. And so what it means to be queer and expansive is changing. And it also makes
yeah,
sense too when you had to fight so long for liberation to like still stay within a box of what is normally accepted. When you're so, hey, 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 we're normal. We can do the normal thing. Look at
yeah,
us doing the
yeah.
normal thing, And so that makes
I'm
sense.
in context, like there was I remember my mom coming to terms with like she wanted to get married,
Mm,
right around like 2004,
mm-hmm.
2003, right? And coming to terms with like, well, I don't just want to have a civil union, I want to get married.
Yeah.
And
See,
then
yeah.
and then going over to Washington D.C. to perform
Mm,
the ceremony at the
right.
time and so I think about it in context, and to
Right.
her, like, seeking to normalize monogamy
Yep.
was the fight,
Yes. Makes
you know,
sense.
and now and now it's very different, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything within context. And so what are some of what kind of transition do I have here for this? We're gonna balance this out. Okay, we talked about some of the difficulties. What are some of the joys that you've experienced with relationship anarchy?
I want to say that really it's the ability to experience so many different things at
Mm-hmm.
once, and like not feel jailed down to any one relationship or one experience with one person. It is that expansiveness,
Yeah.
that I find incredibly important to my life,
Mm.
and incredibly enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I honestly, at this point, it's been about 2 years now. I can't imagine my life being different. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once you go down the rabbit hole, you are forever changed, you
Yeah,
know? There have been some days, when like things are going, not wrong per se, but I would just say complex in my journey where I'm like, damn, it was so much simpler before this. Can I go back? And it's like, well, you got all this insight and awareness now. No, you can't. Now that you stretched, you can't go back, right? Like
right.
I like literally cannot. And so yeah, you're here now. You are here now on the ride. You know what I mean? And just
Yeah,
embracing
yeah.
it for what it is every way of the journey. And what I was hearing you say was like the abundance of possibilities, right? Just the
Yes.
abundance of possibilities that are available now when I talk about exclusivity, right? We all want the exclusivity. I want to be special and special. And I think for me, it's been such a transformation to find exclusivity of the individual. There is no other Aaron. There is no other Nicole. There is no any other all of my lovers. And so there is that level of quote unquote exclusivity. And I hope that people can feel that security of that. Like of
I
like,
hope so too.
hey, you're a cool human. Like I'm a cool human. There is no other you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's transformed rather than an exclusivity of action.
Yeah.
That's huge, right? Unless that's what you want, which is then a lovingly choice that you have made together. Right? And then beyond that, though, there's so many worlds of possibility when you don't have to find security through that kind of exclusivity of control, which is often what we all fall into of a default, and without even consciously thinking about that. And so when things are more able to be fluid and fluctuate and then have that sort of freedom paired with the values of community care, which are something that come together and are really complex, right? That we have to balance in so many different ways. But that freedom is that life force. You don't feel locked in a box anymore. If you want something in your life to experience something, you could check in with the people around you and have a consent conversation about it where they either support you in that or go their other way. And like we're all lovingly support each other in that, right? So
Yeah.
it's such a transformation to feel that kind of capacity in your heart to know that if there is something that you want, that you can have those communications with the people in your community and then be able to experience that. That's
Yeah.
transformative and so
It's
life-giving.
yeah, it really is. And it feels healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Like it's not just that it's not just a quantitative, like, I have all these great relationships type of thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
that it feels like the right thing for me to do, and
Yeah.
for the way that I want to live my life. And
Mm-hmm.
like, that's more important than anything else to me right now. Like, I
Yeah.
really want to, I feel that, and it brings me joy every day.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, that's a great segue into the last question I have of the research, which is what do you wish other people knew about relationship anarchy?
I wish people knew about anarchy in general.
Yeah, let's start there.
Like,
It is not chaos.
yeah, right. I mean, it's not chaos. It's actually, you know, I try so hard to explain like what a horizontal power structure is.
Mm,
Like I try so hard to explain that like anarchy is, has been given a very bad rap,
sure. Sure. Yes.
but mostly by marketing, but
Yeah.
but also for obvious reasons. We want everybody wants to enforce a power structure because you can gain power over other people. So recognizing that each one of these hierarchies that are in our lives are also really hurting them, like hurting our lives deeply, is a part of anarchy in general, but relationship anarchy especially. There is so much that can be done to democratize relationships in general. You don't need to be like, well, this person is in charge of sex, the financial situation, the job,
Mm, mm-hmm.
the kink that we have,
Yeah.
all of these things. Like
Yeah.
you're basically making a tyrant of your partner in those regards. And when have we ever loved tyrants, right? Like why in what world are we like, yeah, let's go the dictator route for a
Yeah.
relationship or
Right.
or really anything else? I think stepping back, if anything, I feel that people should really step back and look at that like heteronormative man and woman and like two kids in the picket fence house out in the suburbs. How much of that is really kind of designed around that patriarch, right? Or that dictator? And, in that context, maybe we should be flattening out that structure a little bit more and figuring out ways to defer that power that maybe one person had traditionally to lots of people.
Yeah.
Because you can't get away from relationships being at least somewhat of a power dynamic. There's no matter what, even if it's mutual power, it's still power. Within that context, you can view relationship anarchy as a screw this hierarchy. I I actually think that the idea of this one person being in charge of this one thing can be broken up, can be shared, and can be democratized in a way that's just not possible in other situations.
Yeah.
Even in poly, right? There are like hierarchical polys.
Right.
Like,
Right. Right. And then even like I've got two partners, even if you do a non-hierarchy there, like, hey, you have a whole group of friends, like you two people are not going to satisfy. You have a whole group of friends, lovers, people who birthed you to get you here. Like, let's
right,
look at all of it, right? And so it's just wild. But I mean, as someone who previously really inhabited that consciousness, given where I was at, where like the man's the head of the household, I'm going to get married and have kids by 21. It's everything of what society reinforced to me. And so if you told me
yeah,
to break that up, I'd say you're stupid. How dare, like, you're gonna die alone, right? All of that crazy stuff that I would have said. But
yeah,
it's wild because when you look back to, I mean, it's a reflection of how deep the power systems are. Because if you look back to times before we had even the privatization of property and we're more of a fluid hunter gatherer, like we read Sex at Dawn and come back to this conversation, like read
right,
Untrue by Wednesday Martin and come back and talk to me after you've talked about the plow, right? And what that did for gender and privatization
yeah,
of space. And even within the privatization of space, like men were still really expected to have concubines and other sorts of spaces where they could go and have sex because that's what men do. And then women were really put into this box of we will stone you if you have sex with anybody else. And so it's fascinating to be where we're at because if you really get into the history of it, like a great book, How Love Conquered Marriage, I like read that for my dissertation.
oh,
Wow,
gotcha,
fascinating, right? Like getting into
yeah,
all of that, into all the different cultures, right? Like this stuff isn't readily available. Again, we're living a system where you have to go to your 9-to-5 job Monday through Friday, and so you can't do the nerdiest deep dive without getting into hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans to write your dissertation on it. So like, wow, here we are. But when you do get into that, you go, oh shit, this was not what we were doing until very recently within our culture. And so there's a lot of insight to go all the way back and learn from. Of course, now we're here in this day and age where like we've got things like AI and other stuff. So like we can't just strictly look back to the past because things are radically different. And we are in a very connected world where you can have at your fingertips hundreds of people that you could contact within the next 30 minutes if you really wanted to shoot a text, you know, like.
But to be clear, like we still have monkey brains.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's
There's
the part
still a limit.
that's like, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, I think that if like you really want to look at like non-monogamy, and certainly like poly, bonobos are a great example, like of like how it actually could work. You know, the bonobos are like very non-monogamous. Actually, like they have a lot of sex, but also they're matriarchal. Like it's technically every troop has a female who's in charge, but it's also it's not hierarchical as almost at all. Like I think maybe there is that one matriarch, but otherwise it's very horizontal. They don't fight.
They use
you know, when they want to resolve conflict, they just have sex, right?
Yes, the tension.
They just release the tension that way. You know, and they're also the closest living relatives to humans that we know of. I think they're closer than chimpanzees. Maybe like I might be wrong on that. Chimpanzees might be the closest, but
yeah, I hear you. And this is where I was fascinated by the book Untrue by Wednesday Martin, which gets into women's desire, because I really got to get back into that book and find the researcher of the study that ran this so that I could bring them on the show, because it was a discussion about these monkeys that they were watching. I think it was macaques. And so they were in this cage setup, and within the smaller cage setup, the women monkeys were often mounted by the men. And then they decided to build like a bigger cage where they could have more space to roam, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the women monkeys were much more like mounting and aggressive and demanding of sex. But what was interesting was that at a certain amount of time, they actually got bored and stopped having sex. Or just, you don't even have to say bored, we can just say they just stopped having sex. And so the researchers were curious, like, what if we put some new monkeys into the cage? Right. So then they started fucking again. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating that like women historically have not cheated as much as men until financial freedom. And then things started really changing when you look at the 70s and women's getting credit cards and stuff like that, because then expansiveness was like, oh, there's so much more that we can do without being killed and like not being able to survive under capitalism, right? And so it's like, oh, we are just scratching the surface of having to rewrite history and our concepts of psychology, because so much of this has been under the lens of white men, particularly within the white Western lens for the last 200 years. And so we're just like scratching the surface of unpacking so much of this. And the wild part is that it's all about narratives, right? Because that monkey, poof, like they're fucking, and then for us, and at least in my past consciousness and a lot of America, there's a 3-letter word that challenges all of this, and it's God. Some people will never do this because of a 3-letter word that holds so much significance in your narrative that God forbid, quite literally, that you ever have sex with more than one person in your entire life, right? And so it's so important that we have new narratives of what is possible, because that's where we get our imagination going. And so when someone like you trusts me to come onto the show and says, here's my life, this is what I do, this is what it looks like, you are opening up a world for someone who has never heard that before and goes, what? That's possible? That's possible? And that's how we start to get this ball moving. And so I really appreciate you coming on to the show today and being so vulnerable with everything that you've experienced to get to the consciousness that you currently have and be here today.
I really appreciate it. I feel very honored.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And it's a humbling experience for sure.
Of course, such a joy. Well, as we come towards the end of our time, I'll take a deep breath with you here. And then I'll ask the last question that I ask every guest on the show. And that is, what is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I know. Anywhere.
Okay.
Anywhere.
Okay. I think early on I was worried that like my friends would see me with like one person at like a bar or something like that, and then see me with another person.
Oh my God,
at,
that
like,
was
another place. Like
double thing.
I was just like worried that there was going to be this weird gossip that was going around.
Yep.
But then I realized that most people just don't care. Like, and if they care, like, you probably don't want them in your life.
Right.
Like, if they care that deeply about that thing.
Right.
Now, I live in a city, so, like, maybe this matters more if you live in a small town or something like that. Like, I can empathize if you feel that way. But even seeing friends and then introducing them to one partner and then introducing them to a different one, and maybe they didn't know I was poly or something like that. I got over that awkwardness very quickly. That feeling of, what are other people going to think of my lifestyle? Because it's not worth it to dwell on what other people think about you that much. Like, and honestly, they're probably not really thinking about you that much.
Right.
People are relatively, I mean, for better or worse, people are relatively self-absorbed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they're into their own thing. They're dealing with their own thing. If they're not dealing with their own thing, they probably should be. Or something, like, because it's not, they're not being a good neighbor, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
If that's the way that I feel about it. Maybe you should just be like a good neighbor to one another. Maybe you should just like not really care, whether somebody has a gay relationship that lives next to you. Like, why is that your problem? Why is it a problem?
Yeah.
Maybe you should like mind your own business.
Right. So normalizing authenticity, the ability to be your authentic self, to not take it personally when other people are on their own journey, because the things that produce such a strong reaction in others are the things that they're afraid of inside themselves, right? And so when you see that strong reaction, you say, wow, okay, like, I've got, I wish you the best. I'm going to take a step back, right? And for myself, like, where I came from, I was condemning homosexuals left and right, which is funny when you decide when you later like figure out like, wow, I was really gay, and I was feeling things in like even third grade about that, and I couldn't even process it, right? Like watching films being like, wow. And so you can wonder why I was the one in class who immediately raised their hand and said, I will say homosexuals are sinners. Immediately, I'll choose that debate topic in class, and literally in Bible class, it was a topic. I chose that one and debated it. Like, why was I so passionate? What a good question.
Yeah, right.
Why? Exactly. And so it's like,
I feel that.
It's like, wow, like, have some compassion for those people. I need to be accountable for the harm that I was causing. Absolutely. But like, to take a step back from those people and say, wow, I wish them the best on their journey because they're going through it, hopefully gives us all a little bit more peace at night to not take it personally because they're going through it themselves.
Yeah. And like, I think like there is a moment where you just have to be like, that seems like a you problem.
Yeah.
Right?
You're reacting pretty strong.
This react is like, I think maybe, and I think that's kind of where I landed with my mom, until she sort of like accepted the situation. It was just sort of like, okay, so if you really think I'm gonna like find the one, right? It seems like a you problem. It's not a me problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was such a joy to have you on the podcast today. Again, thank you, Aaron, for being so vulnerable and so trusting of me to hold this space. I'm truly honored anytime someone takes up the call to have this conversation with me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having it. I really appreciate it. Love talking to you today.
If you enjoyed today's episode, then leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com to get resources and learn more about all the things we talked about on today's episode. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all next week.